welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso, and I am excited to be with you today. We have an amazing guest on the Success Ascent. His name is Scott Jeffrey Miller. He's already doing this. I love it. I love it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Scott Jeffrey Miller in just a second. However, I do want to just thank you for being here today. We are live stream. If you ever want to get updates, you can go to thesuccessascent.com or patmancuso.com. That'll take you to both places, same place. You can get our updates. You can download the show if you'd like and get anything you need from our services. So we're just so thankful that you're here today. So let me introduce this character. And I'm telling you, we've already had a little bit of fun before we started. We've discovered that neither one of us is super technology driven. Oh, we're not supposed to share, sorry. But I'm telling you, Scott is an amazing content creator. But let me tell you a little bit about him first. So Scott was raised in Central Florida and began his leadership journey early. He was involved in politics very early. And Scott, I'd love to talk to you about politics, but probably not a great conversation for us to have today. Scott joined the Disney Development Company, where for 4 years he was part of the team that designed and built the famed city of Celebration. I have some friends there. Hopefully they're listening and watching. At the age of 26, it says he was kicked out of Disney Orlando. We might have to go into what that is about. Moved to a natural place for a good Catholic boy. We already talked about that Catholic commonality, to Provo, Utah. Recruited by Stephen Covey, Dr. Stephen R. Covey's team, Scott built a 25-year career in the most respected and influential leadership development firms, serving in nearly every role imaginable. He was a frontline salesperson, to project manager, sales leader, general manager, vice president, chief marketing exec officer, and executive vice president. Scott's professional roles evolved as he became a multi-bestselling author, radio and podcast host. You've interviewed some people that I absolutely love, and we'll have to talk about that, how I make that connection later. He's a podcast host, leadership coach, columnist, and global keynote speaker. Scott, what the heck haven't you done, for crying out loud, is what I've got to ask you in just a second. Scott currently serves as a special advisor on thought leadership for the FranklinCovey Company and hosts their weekly podcast series on leadership with Scott Miller. Lives in Salt Lake City, Utah, with 2 annoying treasured dogs, and lives every day full of gratitude, all the blessings. So, Scott, welcome to the show.
Pat, thank you, man. Delighted to be here. I appreciate you lending me your spotlight and your platform. Thanks for your abundance.
Well, I'm grateful that you are here. So, Scott, I always have some fun with my guests when we start off, and I say, that was Scott on paper. Tell us something about Scott that wasn't on paper.
Well, I've got 3 boys. I have 3 sons with my wife, Stephanie. We've been married for almost 12 years. Our boys are 7, 9, and 11, and they all have my personality, to my wife's horror. And they're actually quarantined right now. 3 days into school, my 6-year-old son, the oldest, tested positive for COVID yesterday. So 3 days into school, all 3 of them were sent home because they go to the same private school. So now I'm not sure my marriage will survive. We survived the summer, and we only made it 3 days. So if you see my wife packing up 9 days from now, you'll know why.
I'll let you go if I see that happening in the background. You know, my daughter started.
She's at the spa right now.
There you go. There you go. Well, my daughter started the first day today as well, and I hope that it goes longer than 3 days. It is an interesting time, isn't it?
Yeah. Especially when they go to private school, because 10 days, like, I'm calculating how much 10 days costed me, right? I
love it.
They're going to be just fine.
Well, so Scott, I mean, there's so much we're going to be able to talk about. However, what I always like to start with my guest is, you're an entrepreneur. You've been an entrepreneur, obviously, as an author and a coach and keynote speaker. And so let's start with your entrepreneurial journey. Like, where did the entrepreneurial bug come from? Can you go back in time, and where did it start?
Yeah, what's an interesting aspect is, I was not an entrepreneur for my entire career. In fact, it was just as of late. I spent 25 years with the FranklinCovey Company, most of which as a named officer, an executive public company. And then before that, 4 years. So literally 30 years in corporate America. It wasn't until in just the last really year that I became full force an entrepreneur. I retired from the FranklinCovey Company. I'm still in good standing. I still host their podcast, which is the world's largest leadership podcast. It's about 7 million every week. But it's just the last year that I've really become full force, almost exactly a year, on my own entrepreneurial journey. So I think I liked the security of the early on, but I realized that last 20, hopefully years of my career will be out doing what I love to do, building a future for myself and my family. My journey at FranklinCovey was phenomenal, and they were very good to me. I was very good to them. But now I'm excited to go out and really kind of test, do I have the chops to make my own experience valuable for others?
So Scott, a lot of people struggle with that transition.
Sure.
Because there's a fear, you've got the security of a job, the benefits, all that type of stuff, future even, and obviously you're part of an amazing company. What helped you get over that hump, if you may?
Yeah, several things. I mentioned, and you mentioned, that I host this On Leadership with Scott Miller podcast. And like you, I'm privileged to host great guests, right? I mean, Matthew McConaughey, Doris Kearns Goodwin, Seth Godin, Dan Pink, Liz Wiseman, Emmanuel Acho, Bill Gates. We got Sanjay Gupta coming on, Will Smith. It's a great podcast. And I was interviewing Rachel Hollis once. Now, she's had a rough year for lots of reasons. Before that, Rachel Hollis was one of the 2 top best-selling authors in America. She, of course, wrote the books Girl, Wash Your Face and Girl, Stop Apologizing. And Rachel said something profound to me, Pat. She said, most people don't fear failure. What they fear is having others see them fail. And when she said that about 2 years ago, I thought, you know what? I don't fear other people seeing me fail, because I think that's like success, is like making a mistake and dusting yourself off and pivoting.
Right.
And so that was a motivator to me to say, I actually don't fear failure. I have a lot of responsibility. I'm the sole breadwinner for our family. My wife, by choice, is a stay-at-home mom and house manager. So the buck, kind of stops with me on the finances. And I was married later in life. I'm 53 and have a 7-year-old, right? So, and a 9-year-old and 11-year-old. So I have a lot of financial obligations. But it was Rachel's comment around compartmentalizing failure. And then it was a couple other guests that talked about disruption. And the fact of the matter is, my entire career at FranklinCovey was the progress was the result of self-disruption. Every 4 to 5 years, I left my job inside the company and started a new job in the company, whether it was moving to London or moving to Chicago or moving to Salt Lake or moving out of a sales role into a marketing role, moving out of a marketing role into a thought leadership podcasting role. And so I always sort of disrupted myself, challenged my skill sets, moved myself beyond my comfort level. And then I realized, I've been doing this my entire career. There's not a whole lot of difference doing it outside the company. Now, not to be naive, 401k insurance and paycheck and, first class travel occasionally. But those are trade-offs you make for seeing if you can make it out there. And I'm 1 year in, and so far, so good.
Yeah. Well, you talked about, you named the list of people that you've interviewed, and, I want to probe on that a little bit. And obviously it's probably some of the relationships that you built, but you don't get to have that platform without having some level of success, right? And some level of recognition. And you said something else I want to tap on, because a lot of this in my journey and the businesses and the people we've worked with over the years, there's a pattern in people's lives. And you mentioned your pattern. It's about every 4 to 5 years, where whether it's new challenges, boredom, there's a lot of reasons for it. We all have patterns where if you look back in your journey, there's usually a window of time where we went, maybe it's time to do something different. Maybe it's time to take on a different challenge. So that's pretty common. So let's talk a little bit about your first year, so to speak, of your entrepreneurial journey. What have you learned?
Oh, man. Make and keep promises to clients.
Okay.
Don't overpromise, underpromise, and overdeliver.
Right.
If you make a commitment on a deadline or a price or a project, you need to keep that commitment. Your reputation is everything. That I think you have to manage your time wisely, because most of us want to go where our strengths and our passions are, right? Whether it's the marketing or product creation, or maybe it's prospecting. It probably isn't invoice creation.
Right.
I've got $100,000 of outstanding deliverables that I haven't invoiced for, because that's not what I'm good at. I'm good at pitching and marketing, and I'm also good at delivering, but I'm not as good at collecting. And so I think the biggest lesson is to make sure that you balance your time across all areas of the business, right? Prospecting, invoicing, creating, delivering, networking, branding, thinking, because like I just proved an example. I've got 6 figures worth of invoiceable, is that a word?
Let's just say money coming in that's not in the bank account yet.
Money that's coming in that's not in the bank because I've not invoiced for it yet. And I need to because, I got to pay the mortgage in September. But that's good advice, is recognize that you're going to have a natural gravitational pull to the things you like to do and are good at because it gives you validation. But as an entrepreneur, you realize quickly you have to balance your time across all of those because you can't prospect if you're not, paying the bills, and you can't just pay the bills. You have to prospect. So I think it's important to draw almost like, a pie chart and make sure you recognize where do you prefer to spend your time, but also where do you need to balance your time. So you're asking yourself kind of every day, am I balancing out my time on all the necessary, if not annoying, areas of entrepreneurialism?
So Scott, so when you said a year, I'm going to go back about a year ago now, you decided to make this decision and you were in the midst of COVID. Are you crazy?
Doesn't everybody quit their 7-figure job after 25 years in COVID? I actually decided about 3 years ago.
Okay.
So I decided 3 years ago that 25 years was going to be enough. And I had some conversation with the CEO and the board, and no one knew. I have, I think, high character. So I worked as hard the last day as I did the first day. And I'm still, like I said, I'm still a paid advisor to the CEO and the board and do a variety of things for the firm, not as an employee. But it took me 2 years to really kind of, get my strategy in mind, my expertise. What was I going to do? Did I have the runway built? Not everybody decides 2 years they're going to have, a runway, but I did it quite strategically. I met with a publicist and a branding agent, talked to him about my fears, my strengths, my weaknesses. And I laid the groundwork for 2 years, some in private, some semi in public. And then the company treated me very well on my departure because I had treated them well as well.
Right.
And they saw the value of keeping me kind of, in the family, so to speak. So I had a bit of an unusual situation. A lot of people think I negotiated a good deal, or they tease me because they saw that, the severance package on the SEC filing. I did negotiate a good deal, but more importantly, I've behaved well for 25 years. I had incursions, I had issues. At the end of the day, the board and the CEO trusted me. I had behaved myself into a reputation of being trusted by them. So they were more willing to accommodate my needs and my desires and kind of keep me around and honestly create an unprecedentedly unique deal for me because they saw my value and I was very transparent with them.
Yeah. Plus you earned it. Plus you earned it.
I did. And the CEO was very gracious to me because he wanted to set me up for success.
Sure.
He's my boss, right? And he can fire me at any point, but he wanted to set me up for success because if I'm successful, FranklinCovey is successful because I'm still an ambassador for their brand and I evangelize their training and books and products around the world.
Yeah. Plus, I'm sure that the return on investment for you over the 25 years was well more than what you received as your package. Come on, let's be real, right?
No comment.
Yeah, no comment. So let's shift gears a little bit, and I'm gonna put you back on full screen because I just want people to get a picture of the mess behind you. The mess. I see the word mess. There's a common theme to that. Yeah. So tell us where that came from.
Yeah, so I have 2 publishing deals with 2 different publishers. One is I have 10 books over 10 years in the Mess to Success series. The first book you see in blue behind me was Management Mess to Leadership Success. And the book I recently published was Marketing Mess to Brand Success. You can see behind me in orange is Job Mess to Career Success and Communication Mess to Influence Success. There are 6 more, 1 a year for 6 years. And then I have a 10-year deal to publish Master Mentors. This book comes out on September 9th. I'm publishing 10 of these, basically 30 transformational insights from my podcast that I host called On Leadership.
Yes.
Where the Mess to Success brand came from is, as a leader in the world's most preeminent leadership development firm, my big learning, Pat, was that leadership is tough. Leadership is messy. Not everyone should be a leader. Not everyone should be an anesthesiologist or a commercial airline pilot. Not everyone should lead people.
Right.
And if you are, you have to acknowledge it's messy. But my big aha was leaders that own their mess, they make it safe for others to own their messes as well. Not to license bad behavior or to, validate major mistakes, but people want to relate to their leaders, especially now post-COVID, where everybody's values have shifted and people want to move on and have side hustles. The point is as a leader, you're going to have messes. You have messes as a husband, as a mother, as a daughter-in-law, as a neighbor, as a committee member. Just own them. Own your mess. It's refreshing. And it's a way you can teach through them. I personally wrote a book about 30 of my biggest leadership messes and 30 of my biggest marketing messes as a CMO of a global brand.
Yeah.
And it wasn't to validate gratuitous mistakes. It's just, I thought this was the way to go, but really I learned this, learned from me, learned from my potholes as, a fairly successful executive leader in a global company that had lots of mistakes. So that's the series. As a Catholic, it was easy for me to a lifelong training. But the books are easy. They're very breezy. But what's common about them is they're based on 30 challenges. So 30 challenges to become the leader you would follow. And people can I also publish these card decks. You may have seen these. Whenever I give keynote speeches, there is a card for each of the 30 challenges. And I create card decks for all of the books that I write. Here's a good example. Here's the card deck for the Master Mentor, right? The 30 mentors that I feature from the podcast. So I like to create mini card decks that kind of give a bit of a cheat sheet to the book.
I love it. I love it. Well, and now I know that I have a book in me for all the mess ups in my life, and I can probably write 30 of them, like messes up on the golf course, messes up on, I love that.
Well, hold on, because I'm writing 10. So you don't take mine. I'm writing sales mess, parenting mess, marriage mess, although my marriage hopefully won't be a mess after 10 days from now, but you could have golf and fishing. How about that?
Yeah, I'll have golf, fishing, Minnesota. That's not something I do here. That's something we do, but
I like that. Minnesota mess to friendly success. Everybody's so friendly up in Minnesota.
Yeah. Scott, again, we're going quickly into politics and we got to avoid that. Let's just say that there was about a year and a half ago where we were not so friendly up here, and we'll just leave it at that, okay?
You just described every state in the nation except for Wyoming.
Oh my gosh. So I've got the marketing mess, and one of the things I think for business owners right now, I think this has been true for a long time. However, I think it's very true now. Is we're in a world that marketing is so important, right? I mean, marketing for businesses is so important. The messaging is so important. And so you've got these 30 challenges. So I'm going to pick one and ask you to talk about it a little bit. And so choose the right measures. Talk about that one.
Yeah, let me preamble that. I think the biggest insight I would share with entrepreneurs and people that are thinking about their marketing plan is now more than ever, you must precisely understand your client's exact circumstance. What is the circumstance that they are in? What is the job to be done? What are they hiring you to do? Because everyone's circumstance is different. You might choose to lump them all in the same circumstance.
Right.
The circumstances are different. Therefore, when you understand their circumstance, you know kind of how it is you're targeting them, whether it be through social media or direct mail or a mall kiosk or some kind of social ad or billboard. Choosing the right measures is really making sure you're measuring the right metrics. Because I don't know about you, but when someone says to me, oh, my Instagram post got 4,800 views. No, it didn't. It got probably 40 views because LinkedIn only counts if it was in someone's feed. It doesn't mean they saw it.
Right.
And so you got to be really thoughtful around what your measures are. And are you measuring the same thing as the sales side of the company or as your funders or your partners want you to measure? Get very clear on what the right metrics, and are they lead measures or are they lag measures?
Right.
Are you looking in the rear view mirror or through the front windshield? Are they influenceable? Because you might be checking or tracking people coming to the store. Now, that might be great for conversion, but you can't influence that. That's a lag measure. People who came into the store today, which you could measure a lot of things that are prospecting behaviors, right? So be very thoughtful around which measures are you choosing, and are they both predictive And are they influenceable? Meaning, do they help you understand your pipeline? And can you change them to make them more impactful in your business? I think a lot of us measure the wrong stuff. We measure what makes us feel good. We measure what validates our strategy. Can I share one more thought on that, Pat?
I'm sorry?
Share one more thought on that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So as part of the Master Mentors book, one of the mentors is a woman named Karen Dillon. Karen Dillon is the former editor of the Harvard Business Review. And she co-wrote a book with the famous marketer, innovator, Clayton Christensen. He died a year ago. You know, he was the author of Innovator's Dilemma, Innovator's Solution. And in this book they wrote called How Will You Measure Your Life? Phenomenal book. They take business principles and apply them to our personal lives. They interviewed a Harvard Business School professor that had empirical research that showed. Now listen carefully, everybody. This empirical research showed that 97% of all organizations that achieve success financially do so with an emergent strategy, not the deliberate strategy that they set out with. Only 7% of the time do organizations achieve financial success with their original idea. 97% of the time, they have to pivot. They have to change. They have to be open to feedback. They have to recognize that their idea wasn't the right idea. And the reason I mention that is if 97% of the time you're going to need to pivot, I'll bet you 97% of the time you're measuring the wrong stuff. You're measuring stuff that validates you, that makes you feel good, that if you look at it through this lens, then it's really successful. Check your ego. Here's the biggest advice I could give you. Great leaders, great entrepreneurs, great marketers are more concerned with what is right than being right. So when you're going into your meetings around product launches and new strategy and marketing campaigns and ideas that you thought about that you're convinced are the next biggest thing, ask yourself, are you more concerned with what is right for the business, for your family, for your customers, for your lenders? Or are you more concerned with being right because your ego is so big, you have to find a way to validate yourself?
You know, Scott, again, we're not going to talk politics, but if we just took that last thing that you said and applied that to our politicians.
Amen.
Wow. Wow.
And to our marriages and to our parenting, to our relationships with partners, with girlfriends, right? All that. It's actually really good advice. It's a lens through which I try to see every interaction to ask myself, you know, am I so far invested in this idea that I'm too embarrassed? It's like I'm too far into it to ever kind of wind my way back. And I love on Zoom meetings with my team. I have about 8 team members. It's a big payroll. Where I will say, okay, guys, ladies.
You better get that billing done. Get that billing done.
I know. I say to them, you know what? Give me some feedback. What are my blind spots? What am I not seeing? What am I hanging on to that I need to let go of? And when you set that culture, when you set that environment where it's safe to tell you their truth, man, we stopped doing a lot of things. We stopped doing Facebook ads and we switched to Amazon ads, or we stopped doing Amazon ads and we send out postcards, or we don't quadruple down unless we have the empirical data to share, to act on.
I love that.
Because most leaders like me, we confuse our emotions, our opinions, and our feelings with facts. They're both valuable, but they're very different.
I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Randy Ross. You may know Randy. He's written a few books, and he talks about the process of, as a leader, asking people, you know, what is it like to be around me? And I'm paraphrasing what he says, and they'll always tell him the good stuff, right? And then he'll say, okay, tell me what it's really like. Like, I want to know the real stuff. And he says it's one of the most transformational experiences when you get comfortable allowing people to do that the opportunities are just amazing.
Beautifully said. I couldn't agree more. I think it's really about, are you confident enough? Are you humble enough to be vulnerable? To really know what it's like to be on the other side of a Zoom call with you, or a meeting with you, or married to you. Go ask your wife or your partner or spouse, what's it like to be in a relationship with me?
Yeah, I'll be 30 years in September. I'm going to wait until after the 30th, and then we'll ask that question.
And I'm waiting 11 days from now because of the quarantine.
So one quick question on the mess series, and then I'm going to shift gears. If you've written 6 so far, right? Is that what
I've published 2. These two are out, and I have 2. Sorry, I have 2 more coming out in the next 2 years.
Okay, good.
4, and I have 6 in the works right now. One every year for the next 8 years.
So let's say I was an entrepreneur starting a business. I should start with marketing mess. And if I was a leader leading others at a high level, I should read management mess.
Well, every entrepreneur I know is a leader of people.
Yeah.
So if I were you, I probably would start with management mess.
Okay.
This will allow you to understand your leadership style and how can you recruit and retain talent? How do you build a culture where people don't spin out after 14 months because that's the new average, right, for your career? How do you build a culture in the midst of the great resignation that's going on? And by the way, my books are light. They're easy. They're breezy. These chapters are 4 pages long. You can breeze through them and get some great concepts. I purposely write books that are not huge books. These are thin books, and you can breeze through them, a chapter in 10 minutes and have some really actionable feedback from a guy who has a lot of expertise in leadership and marketing after a 30-year career with big brands. Yeah, I've made every mistake, and I've had a couple of successes, and I share them all in the book.
It's about the mistakes and what you learn from them that produces the successes.
I agree.
So let's shift gears. The Master Mentors, that's coming out here in September.
Yep.
What would people learn from that in the people you've interviewed?
Yeah. So I selected 30 of our first 100 guests, people like General Stanley McChrystal, Dr. Susan David wrote the book Emotional Agility, Seth Godin, Dan Pink, Stedman Graham, right, the lifelong partner of Oprah and an entrepreneur in his own right, Stephen M.R. Covey, who wrote the book The Speed of Trust, Brendan Bouchard, Dr. Daniel Amen, the neuroscientist, Kim Scott, who wrote Radical Candor, Liz Wiseman, who wrote Multipliers. It's a very episodic book.
Yes.
I talk about brain health. I talk about becoming a multiplier. I talk about being on the right side of history. I talk about goal identification. So I pull one transformative insight out of each of these amazing people from different backgrounds, NFL players to Pulitzer Prize winning authors to 4-star generals to, PhDs and MDs. And the chapters are very light. Again, they're easy, they're breezy. And here's Ryan Holiday, right? He wrote the book Stillness is the Key and The Lives of Stoics. And I just kind of share a big idea. The first chapter is a man named Nick Vujicic.
Oh, I know that. I know Nick.
You may know Nick. Nick is a good friend of mine. Nick, of course, has no limbs, no arms and no legs.
Yeah.
And he has built an amazing life of influence on people. And the whole chapter is about gratitude. Now you might think, gratitude, I got it. No. When you're around someone that has no arms and no legs,
right,
this transforms your gratitude for your fingers to be able to scratch yourself, to be able to take a drink, to be able to type an email,
answer the phone,
go to the restroom.
Yeah.
He's amazing. House.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Feed yourself, right? I mean, so the book is, again, it's kind of it's an endearing read. It's kind of, you read a chapter, you put it down 4 or 5 pages, and you really think about this. There's action items in it. I believe this is going to be the next Chicken Soup for the Soul series. There are 10. I already have the next Master Mentors Volume 2 in works with Matthew McConaughey, Emmanuel Acho, Jen Sincero, who wrote the whole You Are a Badass series.
Yep.
There's some great people in Master Mentors too, but it's a light, easy, breezy read that I think can transform your life.
I love it. I'm looking forward to it. It's already on the list. I love it. We're going to let everybody know where they can get those books. So Scott, let's shift gears. I prepared you for this. What's the best advice you've ever been given that hopefully you followed?
So the CEO of FranklinCovey is a man named Bob Whitman, right? Harvard MBA, has, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars, a man of impeccable character, Iron Man and Kona 30 times, climbed the Matterhorn, kind of typical, high performance CEO.
Right.
We're very different. I love him. He loves me. And he gave me this advice once. He said to me, thinking is a legitimate business activity. And I think in the midst of busyness as a badge and activity and productivity, I think it's important to sit back on your feet up on your desk and do nothing and just think. Think about your ego. Think about where you went wrong. Think about your team members. Think about who's right for being poached. Think about who should you take a risk on. Who should you forgive? Should you merge? Should you sell? Should you buy? Should you scale back? Should you step aside? Should you double down? Thinking is a legitimate business activity.
Yeah.
And I don't think we do that enough because we're conditioned to be in multitasking mode and this idea of I'm back to back all day today.
Right.
I would really challenge everyone, stop saying you're back to back all day. Because if you're back to back all day, you're only in execution mode. You might be in strategy mode, but you're probably not in thinking mode. Thinking is a legitimate business activity.
I love that. Well, and I would add to this is that when you're not thinking, you're mostly reactionary. And when you're reactionary, you're likely not making a lot of great decisions.
Well said.
Yeah. Okay, let's flip it upside down. You know what's coming. What's the worst advice you've ever been given that hopefully you didn't follow? And if you did, what did you learn?
I have been offered many opportunities to leave the FranklinCovey Company, right? Be the CEO of this company or this startup there. And I had once some advice that I should leave about 8 years ago from a very wise person, a mentor of mine. And this person wasn't advising me so much to leave FranklinCovey as they were to go to this new organization. And if I had gone, who knows what would have happened, but I stayed, A, because I was fairly loyal, B, because the CEO, again, as much as we are very different and disagree on a lot of things, he cares about me. He loves me. He loves my family.
Right.
And I stayed. And it was good for me financially. It was good for me being able to publish books and get publishing deals. And this podcast came about. So what came about as a result of it was, you could argue it sixes. But, I just believe when one door opens or when one door closes, another opens, I often believe that sometimes a disappointment turns into an appointment. And I see everything like that, right? I was disappointed that I didn't take this other opportunity, but I thought, okay, that is closed. How am I going to turn my decision to stay into an appointment?
Yeah.
Into an appointment to move, to get promoted, to launch a podcast, to become a Wall Street Journal bestselling author, to create more messes that I can learn from and share. So that advice I was given to leave, I don't know if it was bad advice, but I think, in my life at least, loyalty has always paid off for me.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Scott, you know what? We're going to close out the show. I'm going to give you a second to get some final thoughts together. And I'm going to share, you can get Scott Jeffrey's books at scottjeffreymiller.com. We're scrolling it on the bottom there. He's got some amazing content there.
That's fancy stuff.
Yeah, fancy stuff.
Like
CNN. Marketing. It's marketing.
Shouting. I love it.
What's that?
It's like CNN, but shouting.
Yeah, exactly.
No shouting. I can take a photo of this. This is
awesome. You should.
Oh,
love it.
This is legit.
I love it. So while he's taking a photo of this, we're gonna just again thank you so much for being with us, for your support. Please share the message. We bring on some amazing guests. They contribute their time, which is highly valuable, and give us some amazing content. I mean, there was so much today that I took away, some great, just the thinking one, impacted me quite a bit. I love that. So, Scott, what would you share as your final thought before we sign off here?
I've been in this company 25 years. Dr. Stephen R. Covey was our co-founder. He, of course, wrote the seminal book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This book has sold 40 million copies. It's the genesis of our company. But it's often confused and misquoted as being the 7 habits of highly efficient people. I want to remind you all that there is a difference between being effective and being efficient. One is not better or worse than the other. But if you're like me and you're very productive as an entrepreneur, you have a lot of hats on, you probably get into efficiency mode. But you cannot be efficient with people or relationships. Remember, with people, fast is slow and slow is fast. So recognize when to be in an efficient mindset, right? Might be with social media or email or whatever it is. Don't try to be efficient with your relationships, because at this point, every company is a technology company and every company is in the same business. You're in the people business. And if you want to inoculate your company from your top producers being poached or stolen from other people, you got to love them. You got to slow down and build relationships, because people do not quit leaders who love them. People do not go across the street for 1% more or $2 more an hour or beer on tap after Thursdays or a ping pong table. People do not quit leaders who care about them. So be thoughtful about when to be efficient and when to slow down and be effective.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. The saying I've operated on, people don't leave the company, they leave the leader. And that's really what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Scott, thank you so much for being here today. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. And if you're listening on the podcast, we really appreciate you. And as I end every show, be happy, be healthy, be safe until we talk again. Take care. See you, Scott.
Bye. Thank you.